Hashem's V'saytivtach L'pi Gital Sacha. We're now in the fourth Perek of Melachim. This Perek, on the one hand, might seem like such a superficial Perek. Why do we even have to know all of the names of all the official administration of Shlomo HaMelech? How could that be helpful to us, L'doros, forever? And the answer is, this Perek is filled with deeper messages. So let's begin. The first pasuk, Vayhi HaMelech Shlomo Melech al Kol HaAretz, really belongs in the last Perek. It would make more sense. And in fact, we don't really hold by the Prakim, because the Prakim were made up by the Christians. It's the Psukim that come from Moshe, that come from a Jewish perspective, because here, if you think about it, this pasuk really, that Shlomo HaMelech was the king over all Yisrael, really goes back to the idea before that Shlomo was the king, that the king during peaceful times, as we mentioned, and that it was a time of mishpat, and so that's really where it belongs. Now, the next is that now we're going to list the administration of Shlomo HaMelech, and if you contrast who he put as his first, he puts Azar Yahu ben Tzadok the Kohen. David HaMelech, just in contrast, put the Sar Tzava, the head of the army, Yoav, as his the forefronter for his administration, highlighting what we know to be true, which is that Shlomo HaMelech's his whole kingdom is built on shalom, and so who better than a religious representation of his administration. In fact, Tzadok the Kohen he did have a role as the person who was the Kohen in charge of the wartime, or if they were to go into war. What's interesting to note is that his role could only be done. He didn't wear the big day kahuna in its fullest form, so the only way that he could have this responsibility is with the special oil. And unfortunately, during the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, where they didn't have the oil because they put the oil away, so this role was no longer, the Melchama was no longer something that they could anoint into this role. The next two people, Elichoreth, the Achia, that are the Sofrim, that are the scribes, a very interesting Mamar Chazal says that Shlomo HaMelech was walking along the way, and he sees the Melech HaMavis, the angel of death, so sad. And he says to him, why in the world? Why are you so sad? What's going on? And he says, well, there are these two guys, Elichoreth and Achia, and my job is to kill them, but they're too good. I'm going to have to get them to be killed. And so what does Shlomo HaMelech do? As soon as he immediately leaves the presence of the Melech HaMavis, he quickly tells them to go to Luz, which is a place that no one died. And on their way, right before they get into Luz, they were killed and they die. And next day, Shlomo HaMelech sees the Melech HaMavis and he's smiling. He says, I don't understand. What's going on here? And he says, listen, my job was to kill them outside of Luz. I didn't know how to get them there because they're Talmidei Chachamim. They're studying all the time. And so I told you, and then you took matters into your own hands. And what does Shlomo HaMelech say? See, you know what? No one can outsmart HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is something that we have to understand, that even Shlomo HaMelech, even he, with all of his smarts, can't outdo what it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. And so our job in life is just to have emunah that Hashem runs the world, and that we don't have to outsmart him. We have to go on his bandwagon and follow him and do what he tells us to do, so that we can live our best life. The next one is Yehoshaphat, and he was the mazkir. He's the recorder. What kind of recording are they doing? So the recording that they're doing is that in this Perek, we see that Shlomo HaMelech had a very, so first of all, the idea is like this. In the Torah, it says that any person that comes for judgment, whoever comes first gets judged first, whoever gets second, judged second. There's no upmanship, and there's no, you can't use protexia. So if you come, then you are to be seen. Every person is an important individual. Every person is equal in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The upmanship is a man-made idea, not what we know is in the way of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Then we have the idea of Zerayahu ben Nasan who's in charge of the Nitzivim. What does that mean? So, in fact, we have to understand that this administration is filled with a very big piece of who Shlomo HaMelech was and his kingdom. So he decided that instead of dividing out the country into Shvatim, which would be 12 Shvatim, instead, he had a different idea. He said, you know what? It's not going to work this way. I want shalom. I don't want divisiveness. I don't want, states against the central government as we had in America. I want it to be that people are working together. And so he divvied up the land into 12 parts based on the 12 months. And he made sure that there was a balance between the different areas, because yes, there's going to be wealthier families and wealthier areas, and so he divided it up so that every area would have one designated month that they would provide the food for the kingdom. And that month, during that month they would give it, and all throughout the year they would be gathering a little bit, so that when you got to the end, and it was your area's month to give food, then you wouldn't feel it so badly, because it would be taking a little bit all throughout the year. And the taxes and the representation of taxes and the divvied up and being in charge of areas, that really was a very large part of Shlomo HaMelech's administration. Remember, he's during peacetime. So during peacetime, his major highlighted element that he put on the people were taxes. And so he has somebody in charge of the taxes, and he has somebody in charge of each of the designated areas. Now, of the areas, however, Yehuda is not mentioned. Yehuda is one of those, is a shevet that is not taxed. Now, that does not lead to very good feeling. And here's another life lesson. The idea of playing favorites, or just giving protectia to different people. Perhaps it was his shevet, and perhaps he had a different calculation. It's not really sure. I don't really know what that calculation is. But essentially, if we go back in time to where it's not exactly the best idea, so we know that unity is amazing. But you know what's even more amazing? The way that he designated that different people would be able, different shvatim were coming together. That's beautiful. Different people are given respect in a nice way. That's also beautiful. But it is a little bit precarious to think that the whole Shevet Yehuda doesn't do anything. So that's a negative, and it's a little bit unclear as to why that is. So now we have an understanding that Shlomo has 12 people that are going to be designated, and there's going to be one more at the end of the Perek. There's one more guy, so perhaps he's in charge if there's a leap year, or he's in charge of all of them, of the Nitzivim. But that's really how his methodology is to keep the people united. Now, among the different areas that are there, you see that he also places his own family members as part of the area, in charge of the area. So, for example, Ben Avinadav Kol Nefet Doar, the area of Doar, is Tafat Bashlomo Haitalo Leisha. So this guy Ben Aminadav, he is in charge of Doar. Doar was a port city. It was a very wealthy city. It by itself was its own area that didn't need much other area to sustain it. And he puts, and this man was married to Shlomo's daughter, Tafas. And so he also, he puts his family members there as perhaps a very great method to ensure loyalty. The hope is that they'll ensure loyalty. But all of these areas, there's Shalavim, there is Megiddo, there is Beit Shemesh. It's so nice that you hear all of the places that that are currently in the lands of Israel, which is just a beautiful, interesting way. And Amir Hashem, we will continue to have more and more connection to Eretz Yisrael as the people who had lived during the time of Tanakh. A very beautiful idea is in Pasuk Yud Gimel, where it talks about the Ben Gever Beramos Gilad Lo Chavos Yair. And so Ben Gever in Ramos Gilad, he governed over Chavos Yair, the suburbs of Yair. Now he's the son of Menashe. Now, what is so important about Chavos Yair? So if you go to the end of when it talks about in the Torah, and it's talking about the different people that took over the area. So there are two people that are mentioned. There's Chavos Yair, and there is Novach. And both of those people conquered area. However, Novach went, and that was it. We lost Novach. Chavos Yair continues until this time. So Chavos Yair remained. And the question is, why? Why was it that Novach went and was, never to be heard from again, but Chavos Yair actually remained strong? And the answer is a beautiful idea that Rabbi Rosner mentions, and that is that Novach was a person. And he identified himself and his area as Novach. I am my land. I am my materialism. I am everything that I own. Chavos Yair ben Menashe, he did not identify as his place and his materialism as Yair. He called it Chavos Yair. It's a suburb of me. It's a part of me, but it is not me. And so it was important, yes, that he named himself, yes, but he didn't put it as he is not his materialism. He is not his money. And so for that reason, it remained. And Hashem promises, if you identify with your money, you will lose your money. If you identify with me and you do good things with your money, but your identification is definitely not your materialism, but on more of a spiritual and more of a depth to your character, then I can let it remain. And then, yes, then you have Chavos Yair. And so, that is something that's very beautiful. And finally, the last idea is the idea of what happens. Yehuda v'Yisrael Rabim. The Yehuda and Yisrael are many. Kechol al hayam larov. They're as many as the sands of the sea. Wow. Ochlim v'shotim usmechem. They are eating, drinking, and happy. What does that mean? So ochlim and shotim. How do you get to simcha? How do you get to true simcha? You get it through the actions first of ochlim and shotim. When you do mitzvos and you do things beautiful at your table and you make sure that everything that you have is something that is for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then you get to the ultimate simcha. And it doesn't go that you are joy. You don't misameach with eating and drinking, but rather take what you have, use it for the good, and then and only then can it lead to the ultimate simcha. And so what we see is that Shlomo HaMelech has a different type of administration. His administration is one that is filled with the beauty of religiousness and spirituality to start with. He strives so hard for Achdus by redefining and redesignating the people in a different type of way, in a system that is there to build bridges. Now he has some, there's some disadvantage, but the people that he puts, the system that he has, is all in doing what? In allowing there to be a Bnei Yisrael that could be Kachol al Asher al Hayam, that could be the fulfillment of Avram Avinu's promise, the promise that was made to him, that your people, all of your people are holy, but they're all united together under one in one area, in which is Eretz Yisrael biyachad, together. And when we have the right values, as so many of the people in his administration highlighted, then we can really come together to be smechem, to be happy, to be joyful, and that this life that is such a beautiful life, it's a life that the Rambam says people were not allowed to convert to Judaism because it was just so good to be a Jew. And Amir Hashem, we will continue to have a golden time, not just a golden age, but a continuous golden process that we can all come together in the together biyachad in Eretz Yisrael b'mhira b'yameinu.